Lamed Amrav. We're in the middle of Halacha Dal, yeah. Let me start from the beginning of the Gemara. Rabbi Amshem and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Amshem and Rabbi Yochanan. Masdis in our Mishnah say about betono chitim. If the plaintiff claims wheat, and defendant admits barley. So in that case, it's a machlokas between Tanakama and Gamliel, whether that's considered to be motive and miktas, conceding or not. Tanakama says not, and Gamliel for some reason says yes. That's the old. Any type of grain is considered to be one commodity. But if you claim two commodities, right, and he concedes of one of those two commodities, so according to everybody, now here the gears has changed by most of the Meforshim, Chayov. Everybody agrees that he's liable. Okay, so everybody agrees he's liable because that's considered to be Moedim and Miktsas. Now, basically take out the next two lines, although they'll make a reappearance partially later on. That was Rabbi Amin Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chine Rabbi Yochanan said certainly not. Said he argues, says no. That which Tanakama says that if you claim wheat and he concedes barley, that's not moedim and miktas. It's not just that case. Even if you claim two types and he conceded one type, that is patur. Tanakama holds that you're not liable for that because that's not moedim and miktas. As we explained last night, moedim and miktas is when of the wheat I concede part, of the barley I concede part, not that of the wheat and barley I concede all the wheat or all the barley. That's what Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yochanan says. Now that's so now the Shaita so good if I tack on the following line here. The tack on, which is part of what we skipped before. But Lama Tznina, why does it say Tano Chitim Voda Lo B'Sorim? So that's the case. Our mission should tell us a much bigger chiddush that not only Tano Chitim Voda Lo Sorim is not considered to be moedim and miktas, but even Tano Chitim Usorim Voda Lo B'Chitim. It's not just where you tie at X and he responded Y, it's not moedim and miktas, but if you tie at X and Y and he responded to all of X, so that also is not moedim and miktas. Why didn't you just mention that? So not the answer. We wanted to show the chiddush Ram Gamliel. And Gamliel says even chitim and sorim are considered to be the same mean. That's a much bigger chiddush. That's what the Mishnah wanted to tell us. Now, next thing. Rabbi Avo should say here. Rabbi Avo kadod Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Avo held like Rabbi Ami had said the following in Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish Amar Reish Lakish said the following. Now here the girsa is messed up, and it should be like this. Masnisa, this is actually gets for the Gemara, parallel Gemara Ksubas. Masnisa b'shetano chitim voda lo b'sorim. Our Mishnah is when the claimant claimed wheat and the defendant and conceded barley. But if he claimed wheat and barley, and he admitted one of them, everybody agrees he's liable. Now, that means the moedim and miktas. That was a base of Malchus Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan holds that if you claim two types and he concedes one type, Tanakah Chacham hold your potter. That's not moedim and miktas. You're exempt from a shiur. Rabbi Reish Lakish holds no. In that case, everybody agrees that you're liable to a shiur. That is moedim and miktas. If you claim two and he concedes one of those two, then that's considered to be moedim and miktas. Very basic machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, according to Rabbi Chia's version of Rabbi Yochanan. Now, again, the Mefarshim throw in Masnisa. You don't have this. Masnisa b'shetano chitim voda lo b'sorim. Oh, I just read that. Sorry, scratch that. I just read. Now, Rav, never mind. I was just repeating what I said before. Rav. Now we're up to Rav Kiador the Reish Lakish. And there's a word missing here. It should be Rav holds like Reish Lakish. How do we see that? Char Barnash, a certain individual, as a boy made him come, Rav, he wanted to come, and he came and judged him for Rav. Now his friend was claiming from him wheat, barley, and spelt. And he conceded only one of those things, but he did concede one of them. So Amar Le Rav, so Rav said, Hamtain Adi Gago Lo Kol the boy. Wait till he finishes reciting the litany of things that you're liable to him. And at the end, you'll have to take a shvur on all of them, because the concept of shvur now Rabbi say. In this case, it's clearly like Rav Reish Lakish, because he conceded not of the grain, of the barley, or of the spelt, but he conceded all the grain and denied all the spelt in the barley. Nevertheless, Rav considered him to be a Moedim Miktas. That's a Reish Lakish who says Moedim Miktas is even if I claim for you X and Y, you concede only X. Okay? That's clearly the case over here. Says Vaiter. This is what Reish Lakish retorts to Rabbi Yochanan. According to that matter that you say, Todosh they mean him if you claim two types, so the law Bechamim, and he only concedes one of them, you don't put the tzara. Common our Mishnah, he's exempt. What about the following case in our Mishnah? It says Tono, it says Chitim, it's clearly a typo. It should be Tono, Kalim, Vikarkos. You claim from a guy vessels plus land. Vessels normally means clothing, but you claim from vessels and land. And if he concedes about the vessels and denies the land, or because he concedes the land to cover him and denies the vessels, the Mishnah said he's potter. That's not Moedim Miktas. What says the Gemara? So says the Gemara, I don't understand. So if that's the case, it should say here now it's changed the Gemara again because the Ksuvas it reads differently. In Kalim b'Kalim u'potter. Kalim b'karkos lo koshkin. That says you're chayav in our Gemara, but it says Kalim is potter. Meaning, according to you, Rabbi Yochanan, even if I claim, let's say, hats and jackets, and you concede only hats, right? So in that case, it's not Moedim Miktas, right? According to Rabbi Yochanan. So, Kal v'chomer, if you claim hats and real estate. So why you tell me the case of hats and real estate is it's pashut? Tell me the much bigger chiddush that even hats and jackets, right? Because hats and real estate is pashut. Amalei. So what did Rabbi Yochanan respond? Rabbi Yochanan would respond. Our Mishnah wants to tell us the chiddush of Gilgul Shvua. Our Mishnah has an agenda. The agenda that our Mishnah has is to tell us that there are cases in which you take a shvuah on land, even though normally you don't. What's that? The case of Gilgul, where one shvuah applies, we can roll on him other shvuahs, even on objects or even on things which are not normally subject to shvuah. Roll upon him another shvuah. That's what they say. They'll tell us that you can require him another shvuah, which you wouldn't necessarily be required as an original shvuah. These are sharachosim sheish lamachrayas. Property which actually chosim she'ein lamachrayas. I didn't fix this in the Gemara. It should be telling us that nobody seems to make this correction here, but it's obviously the case. That property she'ein lamachrayas zokim and chosim sheyesh lamachrayas ushavalem. In other words, property she'ein lamachrayas metalli. Right? They don't stand under lien for a loan, right? That if you take a shvuah on them, though, because of their shvuah, that there's okay, that you can also then roll upon him a shvuah on something which does have a chrayas, meaning on real estate. Okay, no, I should have fixed it when I was prepared. Okay, says more. Wait a minute, I even got a question on Reish Lakish. But I feel Reish Lakish is legal. What about the following case? The case of the Yenim Mishnah. It says the Yenim Mishnah. The tzin says, I come and they say, hey, Yanko, you owe me barrels of oil, okay, jugs of oil. Yanko concedes, what does he concede? The jugs, not the oil, right? So, in that case, it said in our Mishnah, was that in our Mishnah? Yeah. It's machlokas Admon Chachamim. Admon says that that's Moedim Miktas. And you are liable. Come and say it's not Moedim Miktas and you're exempt. Okay, there's no shvuah. Ma'akei whatsoever. Im shetorno kan kani b'shemen. If the claim is on the jugs plus the oil, and he concedes on one of them, so according to Reish Lakish, everybody should agree she'eshel doya me'atayna. According to Reish Lakish, that's Moedim Miktas. How come Chachamim are arguing, right? And if on the other hand, im b'shatono, if he could claim for him only, now it should be the opposite of what it says here. Shem and oil, v'hodla b'kakanim, be considered the jugs, right? I claim to you oil, you consider me jugs. So that's clearly not moed mikzas. So according to Reish Lakish, what's the case in which there could be a machlokes? Either definitely is moed mikzas. If he claimed oil and jugs, then you consider only the jugs. Or it's something not moed mikzas. If all he claimed was oil and all you responded was jugs, so it's not moed mikzas. What's the case in moed mikzas? So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Zerah, B'Shem Shmuel said, you know what's about the shatono? Now here it should be instead of a kankane b'shem, and the way it says it in Ksuvas is kankane shemen. I came to you and I say, come to you and I say, Yankel, you owe me barrels of oil. What does barrels of oil mean? Does it mean barrels full of oil? Does it mean barrels worth of oil? That's the machlokas, Admon Chachamim. That's exactly the point. Shatono kankane shemen. Ahein Amar. So one opinion holds that the claim is kankanim below shemen, not the claim. Sorry, the response. The response is kankanim below shemen. In other words, it's a moedim emiktas. You claim me the oil and the barrels, and I respond, I owe you the barrel or not the oil, right? So that would be moedim emiktas. Kon Reish Lakish, right? That's the svara of Admon who holds this is moedim emiktas, right? Admon's the one who said that is moedim emiktas, and you make a shvua. Because the guy wanted oil and barrels, and you can see the barrels. Hainamar kakani below shemen is the response. Hainamar, the chachayim, however, say the whole claim, not the response. The claim was shemen below kankanim. No, it's not moedim emiktas because the claim itself was for oil, not for drugs. So they were claiming oil, and he was responding drugs. That's not moedim emiktas. So the machlokas is what the claim was. Was a claim for oil and jugs, in which case, according to Reish Lakish again, well, the moedim mikzas is even if I concede to all of X out of X and Y. So according to Admon, the claim was oil and jugs, and I concede the jugs, so moedim mikzas. According to Chachamim, the claim was on oil without jugs, and I concede the jugs, so that's not moedim mikzas, right? It's like apples and oranges. So it says the Gemara, says the Gemara, kankanim v'lo shemen. I understand the concept of oil without jugs. I mean jugs without oil. Makes sense. The guy responds, I only owe you jugs, not oil. It makes sense. But shemen v'lo kankanim? How can somebody claim oil without the jugs? You said kankanim shemen, oil without the jugs? Says, well, yes. Rabbi Lezer Shem Rabbi Yamin said, Mapik Lishto explained it in the following manner: machzin dem shach, measures of oil, right? You owe me barrels and barrels of oil. When they talk about barrels of oil in the spot market nowadays, right? They don't know, they're not talking about the actual canisters, right? They're talking about measures of oil. So what? Units, right. So that's what he meant. He meant units of oil, so that was the claim, and that's how, that was the claim, and therefore it's not moedim mikzas if you can see them barrels. So that's more, one of those amazing Yerushalmi questions I remember we marked on this in the Ksuvas, right? When these questions which doesn't appear in the Bavli, right? Which is, Vishalune, let's ask the claimant what he means to claim, right? Remember we marked that? Let's ask it. Says more Bahudi static. He became mute. Definitely, not definitely. He became mute, he can't tell us anymore. Okay? So that's the end of that sugi. It says in Mishnah, boy, we might finish early tonight. Kinim Asnisa. This is the way to read our Mishnah. See, amazing things happen when you stay awake when you say shiur. Stomach. Kinim Asnisa. Now I'm going to fall asleep. Kinim Asnisa is the way to read our Mishnah. Kafar v'miktzos karkos. If he denies part of the real estate, it should be potter. Emotion and ribas change it. B'miktzas kalim v'nai miktzas kalim yerchayev. There's no moedim miktzas by karkos because, of course, by karkos by definition, no shvua, right? Moedim miktzas by kalim there is. Once there's moedim miktzas by kalim, we say gilgul shvua. What does gilgul shvua tell us? That once you take moedim miktzas on the kalim, we make you take an oath on the land as well. We roll on more shvuos. Okay. We roll them in. Here, reincarnation, right? But that comes from rolling in. Oh, okay. Says more, we roll the neshama back in again. Okay, halacha hey. It's like a rerun. That's what it is. Okay. Says more, Ein Ishmael al Karat says Mishnah rather. Ein Ishmael al Karat Cheresh Shreit V'Katan. You cannot take an oath on the claim of a time Cheresh Shreit V'Katan, meaning if the claimant is a deaf mute, an imbecile, or a child. You cannot make the say. You don't have to respond with an oath. How very much being a katan also. You don't make a katan take a shvuah if he is the defendant. Aval nishboin lekatan ula hekdesh. But you do make a shvuah to a katan and to hekdesh, because the halacha is by yosem, by an orphan. Even if the orphan doesn't demand the shvuah, we make a shvuah before we collect from his property. So that's a case where even though he can't claim a shvuah, but basically will enforce a shvuah even though the owner of the property is currently a minor. Okay? Similarly, the same thing with the hekdesh. In other words, even though hekdesh itself does not force a claim, nevertheless, if there is such a case where there's a collection taking place from hekdesh, and Moshe gives a scenario, you're marking the property, and then plaintiffs come and say you owed money on the property, so then you take a shvuah to hekdesh, even though hekdesh itself could obviously does not lay claim and ask you to make a shvuah, but based in compels you to make a shvuah in that case.
Now, katan age is between 12 and 13, or even younger?
Katan of what?
That's right. Requiring a shvuah.
No, any age, because he owns the property. He is the owner right now. We act on his behalf for his guardian. We demand a shvuah for him, even though he's not of age to demand a shvuah. Yeah. No, I didn't answer the question. It doesn't matter because we're defending, we're acting as guardians of his. Okay, in terms of it's not so you don't need a katan who could have made a shvuah in order to demand a shvuah. You need basically to step in and require a shvuah before we let you collect from property of a katan. Okay, says the Gemara. See if it says kitin isha reyu. If you give money to your friend to safeguard, this leads into the concept of shvuas because the safekeeper's oath. So it says areu prat l'kotan. You're giving your friend not a kotan. Now ad kedun. Now the Gemara has a very interesting question. A very interesting answer. Ad kedun shenasa lo kotan. I understand when you gave it to him when he's a child, v'tava kotan, and actually the child gave you an object for safekeeping, and then he claims it as a child again. Okay, he claims it back as a child. So you have to take a shvuah for him because he's not reu, right? He's not when he gave it to you, he wasn't your friend, he wasn't your peer, he wasn't an adult. But what about nasa lo kotan? If he gave him the object for safekeeping as a kotan vatava gada, but then he grew up and became an adult, he demanded the object back, and you claim you don't have it anymore. So then, can he require you to take a shvuah? That's the question. Says the Gemara, no. Talmud Lomar re'eu. It says Reu another time in the next pasuk. Has to be an adult both when he gives the object for safekeeping and when he demands a shvuah when it was not returned properly. Rabbi Bar Memel said, wait a minute, it should be pliga. Does not argue Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, this is actually the question which I thought was cute. The Rabbi Yochanan who said, I come to you and say, Yanko, you found my lost object and then you stole it. Okay? In other words, what?
He didn't give it back.
He didn't give it back, right. Right? Okay, I heard there was a big Misa today on the news about a woman who got a cashier's check by $15 million by accident. They're supposed to give her a cashier's check for $15,000. Instead they made out for $15 million. Obviously the teller is losing his job. But first thing she did, instead of return, she didn't return it to the bank. She didn't deposit, no. She hired a lawyer to see if she can negotiate with the bank a deal to give it back. Smart, okay? So, not ethical, but smart, okay?
Gets 1/3.
What?
The lawyer gets
Lawyer gets a third. Yeah, the lawyer. Oh, sure, the lawyer is very ethical. So in any event, so they told me today in the afternoon. I didn't hear the story myself. Somebody told me. So in any event, be that as it may, Lamaisa. So I claim you found my lost object and then you stole it. So chayiv. So this guy is liable to take a shvuah that he didn't actually steal it. Now, because it's a shomer aveda, and a shomer aveda also has to take a shvuah. Now, Lamaisa, Rabbi says, Gemara, this is an amazing Yerushalmi type question. The Yerushalmi is asking like this. This is the way the Ritbaz B'nai Moshe explained it. The Yerushalmi is asking, look at, a cotton who gives an object of safekeeping is no different than somebody who lost an object and then knows it to somebody else's hand and claims that that person took it for himself. Because there, it reached the hands of the shomer, not via a gadol, but via a loss being found on the street. So when a cotton gives somebody something for shmira, why is it any different than a shomer aveda? If a shomer aveda who got it without being given it by a gadol has to take a shvuah, so too somebody who got it from a cotton should have to take a shvuah upon returning it. It's a very cool connection, right? One of those hyperlinks. I haven't had that in a while. So I tell you, again, somebody says you stole the lost object of mine which you found. Chayv is liable to take a shvuah. When he says, "Where's my lost object?" and he says it was stolen, so how come over here it's not the same thing? Rabbi Barabba said, "He put there lo she'amar lo achat koton tavatani." We can explain this. Now, the way B'nai Moshe explains it, I'll explain first B'nai Moshe. He said, "This is no kimta." If he came as an adult and demanded only as an adult, he said, "Look, I know I gave it to you as a cotton, but it doesn't count because now I'm an adult." And just like this case of the Aveda, Taka works. This is talking about Spaghetti can require shvuah. The case can require shvuah is only in the case where it came and commanded of him when he was a cotton, right? In other words, when he came as a cotton and demanded back, okay, the shvuah al cotton, he doesn't have to take the shomer doesn't have to take a shvuah. That's how the B'nai Moshe taught it. But the Ritbaz and somebody else, Shai Teres Yisrael, also learns it. No. It's not talking about actually a case where he came and demanded back when he was still a child, and where he demanded back as an adult, the halacha would be different. No, it's amigo. Since he could demand it back when he's still a child, because he knows to demand it back, because he knows it is. So therefore, it's as if he demanded back when he was a child, and therefore he can never require a shvuah. The guy who lost the Aveda now comes to the guy who found it and says, "You stole it." He's a gadol. When he makes the demand, he's making the demand as a gadol. That's why he can generate a chiyuv shvuah. But and he was a gadol to begin with as well, from the get-go. But here, this katan, since he could have demanded it back while he was still a katan, it's as if he demanded back while he was still a katan. And since if he had demanded back, he would not been able to require shvuah. So too, even if he lemaisa doesn't demand it back until he becomes an adult, doesn't matter. So it's a one time he could have demanded back, and the guy would have been part of the time without a shvuah. That tour sticks to him, which is a big chiddush, but that's how they learned it more. Okay. It says Re'eu, your buddy. Re'eu means an adult. Okay. So again, according to Ritbaz, it means he says to him, "Achat kotet tavatani." Why you were caught? You could have demanded from me. Therefore, since you could have, niftar shvuah sachem exempt from your shvuah. Says the Shvuah Hashem tiyeh bet shneim. Shvuah Hashem is between the two litigants. La'otzi ha'yorish. This precludes between heirs. Says what are you talking about? Rabbi Yerushalmi Yossi said, "B'yorshavu masnisin." Which Mishnah? I forget which is. 1 second. The Brisa, but which Brisa are we talking about? I don't remember which Brisa we're talking about. Oh, later on. The next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is talking about, is the next Mishnah? No. It's not the next Mishnah. somewhere later on. The Ritbaz brings it down. I don't know where it is. But it says the Yisraelim don't collect except with the Shavuot. And the Mishnah, somewhere later on, it says it's talking about where Yisraelim are collecting from Yisraelim. Anyway, so if Yisraelim are collecting from Yisraelim, so by definition, we're talking about between two sets of heirs. So you see, I don't remember the price is, but we see that between two sets of heirs, therefore, there is a concept of Shavuot. Right? It's not just between the principals, but even between their heirs. So what do you mean, to pay Bein Shneim and not their heirs? It's also between heirs. So the one actually rejects that attempt at halachic drasha, now goes into an agadic drasha. It says, you know what? So rather, what do we do with Ben Shneim? We say, Eina zazimi Ben Shneim liyolam. This shvuah is stuck for all eternity between these two people. Again, it's an agadic drasha, not a halachic one. How so? Ima mashbia sheker. If the person who administers the shvuah is a liar, so if let's say eventually the shvuah will devolve upon him. Ima nishba la sheker. And if the person who takes the oath takes it as a lie, so if let's say eventually the curse will devolve upon him. My timer, what pasuk teaches us this? This talk about it. This pasuk in this chayah, which talk about an olah. An olah is a curse, but a curse in the Torah is tantamount to a shvuah. And it says, Hashem tzvakos. Hashem's I'm going to take it out. Uval beis haganam, it's going to come to the house of the thief. Val beis hanishba b'shmila sheker, and to the house of the guy who takes the oath in my name for vain. Okay. Amar Shmuel bar Nachman. Shmuel bar Nachman said, Malachi chavola, malachim who come terrorizing malachim, terrorists. Chavola, machablim is terrorists. They don't have springs. And I was going to look this up in Reb Tzadok, and I forgot to look it up because I'm sure he says something. So it says malachim they don't have springs. Now springs means they don't actually have joints in their knees, which of course is all a metaphor, right? They can't bend their knees, they can't sit down anywhere. Malachim never sit. That's when we emulate the malachim, we stand. Okay? So malachim, they never park themselves because they're constantly going on a mission from place to place before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Except one guy's house, and certainly malachim chavola, they never sit down. They're always jumping from place to place to commit more terrorist acts. But there's one place where they sit down. One place where they sit down says, they sit down. My time, what part of the teacher says this? My time because it says mishopo it's misach, but they're constantly running around the earth and going around it. But here it says no. Some use nishbal sheker. They park themselves. It says in the pasuk upa beis haganov. They'll come to his house. But beis nishbal sheker. They kill so as eitzav as abonav. They just rip down systematically his stones and his sticks and stones. Come and say, the stones cannot be burnt by fire. A lying oath. That's what does them in. Okay, because that's what it says. The Malachi Chaval will come and eradicate his sticks and stones. Okay? Rabbi Yoram says it's only if you lie in the oath. Rabbi Yosim, and this is probably the source, maybe the Bavli as well, but I don't remember from the Bavli. This is a source for Am Yisrael being very stringent, not take a shvuah even if it's true. This Gemara, because it says Rabbi Yossi says Hafilu al emes. Even a shvuah al emes can have terrible repercussions. Chagai dorish kahadot to Rabbi Yossi. Chagai used to expound like that, which Rabbi Yossi says even a shvuah al emes. Uvda hava, there's a certain case, a very tragic case. B'chad isa, there was a certain woman ta'azlus miyaruch kabei chaverta. She went to knead dough by her friend. And there was in the fold of her tichel or something like that, some sort of kerchief she had, $2. Noflula, they fell inadvertently out of her kerchief. The and got kneaded into the bread. Okay, so she lost it, right? She turned over a kerchief and looked for the money when she got into her own house. Couldn't find the money. So she went back to her neighbor. She said to her, give me the $2 which fell in your house. So she said, I don't know anything about them. If I know about them, may I bury my son. Needless to say, she buried her son. Says Zumar Miyalun Mikarva Mikvaraya, when they came in from the Levaya, Shamas Kala, she heard rumors, Umrah, which said, You got to spend look for Tiyah. If not that she knew about them, she wouldn't have buried her son, meaning she was lying. She knew where the money was. So she took a shvuah again. Foolish lady. She said, in the other bone, Isa, if I know where they are, Tikave bracha rana. I should bury my second son. Guess what happened then? She buried him. Olim and Achmasa. So they came in to console her. They be given the Sudas Avrah. The Katzil Charigo, they cut open one loaf of bread to give it to her. Lo and behold, what was in the loaf of bread? The money. Vashkun trained in Orim, Arichin Goigul, and they found the $2 within the bread. Ador Milsa Amras teaches us, Ben Zakai Ben Chayav, whether you're meritorious or liable, the Shvuah Lotel, don't put yourself in the situation of Shvuah. This is a very explicit Gemara, and I assume this is the source of our tradition to avoid taking Shvuahs even if they are true. Okay? Not to get into these heebie-jeebie things. Okay. Hello, Vav. These are things you don't take oaths on. Avodim, slaves, Mishoros, documents, karkos, real estate, hekdeshos, the property which is owned by hekdesh. Amen. Also, the amen tashlo tashum keflo tashum arachimishim. You steal them, you don't pay double, and if you slaughter or sell them, you don't pay arachamisha because they're not considered to belong to the individuals who don't own them. Sharmechinam ein onishbas. If somebody's watching them for free, Ein Onishba doesn't take an oath if they're destroyed. Shomer Sachar, Noisei Sachar, if there is a person who's a Shomer Sachar who's getting paid, and Rishayim does not pay. Rabbi Shimon, they're not settled, it's a parish of Shmira. Rabbi Shimon says, it says your Dvorim, but it should be Kachim. Kachim Shuchai B'Achriyusan, Karbanos that you must replace if they get lost, Yishpaim Aleim, there are Shvuos concerning them. If the owner actually doesn't have the place to get lost, then the Shomer does not have to take a shvuah upon them. And then the word's going to explain why. Rameir said the things which look like the land, but they are not land. Chacham did not concede the point of it. Be that as may, what was his point? Ketan, how so? I gave you 10 laden grapevines. Now they're connected to the ground. But laden means they're about ready to be harvested. So according to Rameir, they're not considered to be ground because they're ready to be harvested. According to Chachamim, until they're harvested, they're still considered to be ground, right? So that's the man, the recipient says, "Ain't no chamish, it's only 5." Remember, Chaim says, "July Chachamim which is going to the ground, it's like the ground, and therefore there is no shvuah concerning them." Now, interesting question to ask the Gemara. What if you transgressed and took an oath, and so you're not liable to take an oath? In other words, you, Meshuggah idiot, you took that's redundant, you took a shvuah on karka, right? Shouldn't have, right? But you did, and you lied. Okay? You took a shvuah, and you lied. So what about that? Because Rabbi Yochanan may be korban. Didn't have to take a shvuah, shouldn't take a shvuah. Once you took a shvuah, you're being a korban. Al shvuah. Rabbi Eliezer may be korban, you don't bring a korban. Since you're exempt, you don't bring a korban, even if you lied. Rabbi Yamachia said, now it should be Kach Meshiv Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Eliezer is retorted to Rabbi Yochanan like this, not the way it says it here, Rabbi Yochanan to Rabbi Eliezer. He said, you know what, I don't agree with you. He said, Shvuah Seidus applies, it's true, and therefore it's korban applies, it's true, to any type of commodity. Because the core Shvuah there is whether you know testimony or not. It doesn't matter concerning what you need to know testimony, be it about land, about avodim, it doesn't matter. If you lied, whether you know testimony about whether you lied new testimony or not, you're bringing korban shvuah, right? So, that's only there. The reason why I say b'shvuah seidus to bring korban shvuah no matter what, it's because you know hegetz ba'avodim shtaros of karkos. It's because there is a shvuah, whether you know testimony about avodim, shtaros, and karkos, about slaves, documents, and land. However, Tomer b'shvuah be conscious because not like that. Shein noheges b'avodim, shtaros, karkos. There's no such shvuah by avodim, avodim, karkos, and shtaros. So therefore, the guy took the shvuah to meaningless gesture, and even if he lied, it doesn't be a korban shvuah. That's Rabbi Eliezer kasha to Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan answers a very interesting answer, very cute chap. You gotta hand it to Rabbi Yochanan for this one. Not that he needs my pats on the back, but nevertheless, he says, look, Shavuos 8 is amazing, fascinating word. Shavuos 8 is Labba based. Where Shavuos Eidos take place? The Basin, right? Right? The Basin, Moshe Shvuah Chashud. Think Basin makes a guy take an oath. This guy, Basin suspects that he knows testimony is not testifying. So he's a chashud. He's suspect to be a liar, a withholder of the truth. Would Basin administer a shvuah to such a person? They'd be very much afraid that he would lie on the oath too, right? So where Shavuos Eidos ever occur? Basin doesn't make the guy take a shvuah. So it must be, says Rabbi Yochanan, amazing word. El b'shavar v'nishba. By definition, Shavuos Eidos is a shvuah taken by the aide on his own initiative, even though Basin does not hold him to the fire, in order to prove to us his innocence. And then, nevertheless, even though he took it on his own cognizance, right? El b'shavar v'nishba v'tamar maybe korban. He shouldn't have taken it. He took it anyway, and he brings the korban. Nevertheless, he was lying. Al shvuah. V'kah here to the same thing. If you take a shvuah on land, of course, Basin would never administer a shvuah on land, right? But the shvuah say this must be you jump up and take a shvuah. So too here, you jumped up and took a shvuah on karka, right? Avar v'nishba maybe korban al shvuah. You transgress and take a shvuah, just like by Shavuos Eidos. Despite the fact that you transgressed when you took a shvuah, you bring a korban shvuah. So too here, the same thing.
Maybe Basin would compel the aide to make a shvuah because he figures he'll deny it, but when it comes to a shvuah, he wouldn't be so brazen to
I would have said like you. I like what you're saying. Promise Gemara doesn't say that way. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold that way. Okay? Okay. You're counteracting what he's saying. He's trying to repudiate you, which is not a bad kash on you. He says that Basin would never. He doesn't make distinctions in degrees of liars. He says if he buys a little bit of a liar, there'll be a lot of a liar. That's what I'm saying. I mean, of course, we can't know for sure. We're not going to take a chance, especially with Shvuah so chomer. That's what Rabbi Yochanan responds to. Okay. Says Rabbi Yisrael in Shmina Minato. Some people want to learn our sugya of from here, from our section from the parsha Shavuos Hashanah, which is in this week's parsha. Chamora Shoro said it says that the issues of shmira apply to a donkey or a ox or a sheep. Ma'alim Yuchadim, what's unique about these things? Sheish b'hem shever u'shvuah, they can be broken and taken in captivity, u'meisa and die. Yosu karkos, so too, that excludes land. Shein bo shever u'shvuah misa, they're not susceptible to parashat Sherman because it can't break, it can't be taken captive, it can't die. Says Marotzi karka v'lotzi avodim. Fine, so let him preclude karka from shvuah, but not preclude avodim. Sure, maybe shvuah are included in the shvuah of Shavuos Bikoton. Says more no. A very interesting answer. Top Ulam Beis Rav. Ma Elim Yuchad. You know, Chamor, Shor, and Seh are unique, or is there special? It should be She'en Lem Knas. They don't have a Knas. What does it mean not have Knas? If you kill them, what do you pay? Actual value. Could be Kefil Arba Chamisha, but you pay actual value, either doubled, either single, doubled, quadrupled, or quintupled. Do you pay actual value? By an Evid, if you kill an Evid, what do you pay? $30 set flat fee. So therefore, it's not similar to Chamor, Shor, and Seh. So therefore, it's not included in the Parsha of Sherman. They're flat feet, so therefore the difference. Let's say Avodim included in Sherman. Let's not preclude Shtoros. It should be Shein Lem Knas. There's no Knas by Shtoros, right? So therefore, what's a Shtoros should be included in the Parsha of Shoimrim. And if a Shomer lies, you should have to take a Shvuah. Says more, no. Melim Yichayim Sheish Lem Onah. These cases have Onah. The cases of Chamor, Shor, and Seh. There's the shiur of a 6, 6 up, 6 down. Yotzu, as opposed to it should be Karkos, Avodim, Vishtaros, all three. She'en Lem Onah. There is no no by them, so they're not comparable, so therefore they're not shaykh to the Parsha of Shomer. Okay? Now, Mikan Amru, from here, not from what we learned tonight, but what we're about to learn. Mikan Amru, if you sell documents to a perfumer, what's he going to do with the documents? Use it for wrapping, right? So for him, they're commodities already. The documents have no meaning in terms of their contents, but in terms of the paper. So for him, yesh lemono, if you overcharge him for the wrapping paper, there's takeono in that case. Right? Because he's looking at it as a commodity, not as a representative thing. Not as a tool. Rabbi Shmuel Darsh is slightly differently. He said, should be own nevesh. Now, the Gemara here brings out one pasuk, but everybody agrees it's just the wrong pasuk to bring down. Should be own nevesh ki secheto. The nevesh sins. Cloud, that's a generalization. In several the pasuk says, it's an object given for safekeeping or something which has to do with partnership. Prat, that's a specification. And then say, Mikol Asher Yeh from everything which is done, Chazer clear, that's another generalization again. So cloud, cloud to generalization, specification, and generalization. Ain't it the done prat, everything has to be similar to the specification. Ma prat, the specification is B'tias moment, so which is a monetary claim, latzmo for yourself, which can be extracted in a court of law, and it has specific value. It should be it has value. The value is not set ahead of time. It says your vidama, but it should be ve'ein dam ksuvim. Umotali has to be a movable object. Upater al you're exempt from punishment. We're val knas and exempt from knas. Those are all the parameters which are necessary in order for there to be a korban shvuah for Shavuos or Shomer. Now the one is going to go through what all these parameters mean. Okay? Says the Gemara, betfias moment has to be something which is under a monetary claim. Meaning where I pledge and I don't do it, I don't take a shvuah. Shvuahs are only where I gave you something and you refuse to give it back, or I claim you refuse to give it back. Okay? So la'atzmo, it's got to be something for oneself. Problem or chaver should be to school. Somebody says to his friend. Now we're going to switch around. It says the next answer. It says over here, because that's what Shai shows us. He's probably right. So we'll skip down one line. Problem chaver nasa pitzitza pas ploni. I say to Yanko, you raped or seduced so and so's daughter. Go take a shvuah. I can't do that. The shvuah has to be between the claimant, the plaintiff, and the defendant, not between the third party and the defendant. Okay? Except by momentist, there's a mechayvo moment, but that's not. We're not getting into that right now. We're talking about by Shavuos Bikadon, it's got to be a Shavuot obligation. It's got to be between the obligator and the obligatee. Says the Gemara. Now, the next case, therefore, is a moti bedin. Has to be a case where you can extract the money by law. Problem is a close case where you say to your friend, going back to the previous answer, which were cut and paste over here, Kilatani ubiyashtani. You cursed me, you embarrassed me. Are these tangible monetary claims collectible in court? No. And therefore, Paul said, therefore, there's no shvuah, and therefore no korban shvuah in that case. Okay? B'yesh l'dam, it's got to have specific value. Prat stores that comes to preclude documents which have specific value. It should be ve'ein dam of ksuvim. It's price not set. Prat l'avonim, except for avonim, was price is set at 30 shekel. Umatal, it's got mula objects. Prat l'karkos precluding real estate. Upatal, and you're exempt from punishment. Meaning, interesting what that means. It means it's got to be something in which it's not shayach kimle b'rabamine, that you're going to get the more terrible punishment. So Prat, it comes to exclude. Somebody says to his friend, you ignited my pile of grain on Shabbos. Shupatr, I can't make you take a shvuah then because you don't have to pay me anyway. Why don't you have to pay me? You get the more severe punishment of being put to death. So ever says there's no shvuah in that case as well. Okay? No monetary obligation, no shvuah. Upata knas, and it says you're exempt from shvuah and knas, probably therefore no korban shvuah and knas, probably tashlumi kefil, that precludes the payment of double of the tashlumi arachamisha and payment of quadruple quintuple, shein knas, which are knas. So in that case, that knas is no shvuah and no korban shvuah. Now I'm a kareya shtoros chaver chutz midaito. This is a fascinating Gemara actually. Next Gemara to the Mishnah. I'm a kareya shtoros chaver. I rip up your documents. I come into your house and I rip up all your documents. What do I owe you? Zilch. Zilch. Says the Gemara. Your commission Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Mana Chadam are Chayav. Once is liable, Chadam are Potter. Now you'll say, well, Chayav. It says you're Chayav, right? Look at it says here. We find the ripper-upper. He doesn't really have to pay. We just find him. By the way, this is a very interesting thing because this comes up. There's a principle in the Gemara and the Bible called Garmi. There's indirect cause and direct cause. And direct cause of loss, the Gemara calls Garmi, and you have to pay. And the Rishonim all go to town. What's the difference between Grama, indirect cause, and Garmi? So one of the Rishonim says, the Ramban says, one of the possibilities is because of Knas. And Echanami, still difference. No inherent difference. Just by more direct cause, Chachamim find you. And they made you pay despite the fact that the rice would be potter. That's what it says here in the Yerushalmi. You see that? It says that if I rip up your documents, yes, it's direct cause of loss because you won't be able to collect the loans, but it's only chayav because of Knas. Not really because I did anything directly to you. Okay?
Knas is going to be the same amount of money as what it said on the
No. What they would be worth in the open market as negotiable tools. Not what the actual value of the loans is. Manar Potter says Potter. It's Kusais and Pied de Chavero. It's no difference in if I'm a mafia guy who's sitting in court and people coming to testify and I growl at him. We don't want to make any trouble later on. So then the Adam shut up. They don't say anything in court, right? Can you prosecute the guy who shut them up? No. He's only causing you loss by not allowing the witnesses, for persuading friendly the witnesses not to testify. But it's your tough luck. He doesn't have to pay for that. Find witnesses with more backbone, right? So it's that, what?
Prosecute them because they're afraid also.
Right. So mine, except Giuliani, he wasn't afraid. So it's just like you're shutting up somebody else's witnesses. You're not liable for that. Says more now. Here's a fascinating thing, actually. This is the Gemara gives you a good recipe for blackmail. So you have a widow. A widow's not allowed. A widow can only collect her ksuva from land, not from movable objects, right? She can't normally collect from movable objects. What about if she collect? So there's an issue. If she does grab movable objects, is she allowed to keep them or not? Okay. So it says, well, you know what? Let's avoid that issue. You know what she should do? She should grab documents. Because grabbing documents, now the Yisraelim are powerless to collect them unless they get these tools back. But we can't take them back from the widow because the widow says, all I did was shut up their witnesses. I didn't actually do anything to them, right? I didn't steal anything which is worth money in and of itself. So therefore she can blackmail them and make them pay in order to get back their stolen documents. Okay? So that's what it says. She grabs documents, it's just like she's closing the mouth when this is Lo Yisadun. They have to pay her off to get back their documents. Rabbi Yami said, now we're off on a tangent. If somebody writes into a document, there's a guy is writing, normally after a guy is dead, you can't collect metalchin from his yisoyim, only karkos. Let's say the guy before his death wrote into the document, you can collect even after my death metalchin from my estate. So it says the Gemara, Logavi. We ignore what it says. Amar says, no. In Kosav Amar, if he wrote it down and said it, Avagav bin Beitin Yoiv, even though Beisim doesn't normally give metalchin, Gabe, he can go and collect metalchin. This is in fact a special dispensation for him to collect metalchin the Yasmei. Okay? Says the Gemara further, getting back to Mishnah B'Shir Omer, any case we have to replace the korban and somebody else stole it, he takes a false oath, he's liable to come true because then the fact that the guy is liable to replace it gives them a vested interest in the property. It's called davar agorim l'mamon, and therefore the other guy who stole it has to take a shvuah to him, and if he lies, that's bring korban shvuah. If he doesn't have to replace the lost korban, I say it's really not the denial against your fellow man, denial against God, because the fellow man doesn't have to replace the lost korban, so therefore there is no korban shvuah. Ravuna said it should be echad kachim. Now I'm going to learn the way the Shara Yisrael does fixing the girsa. Even though Liran back in Baba Kama, where this parallel sugi appears, there was loath to fix the girsa, but I'm going to stick with the Shara Yisrael. Ravuna echad kachim kachim, not kachim ksherim, kachim. chatas, ola, the holiest of holy. V'echol kachim kalim, the lower type, shlomim. Shechai brech yusan, where you're liable to replace them. Avi shein la Hashem, even though they really go to God. Currently, by him, it's God's replacement, it's denial against him, and therefore, there is a shvua and a korban shvua. The cheshva yitzol pikadon, it's denial against a friend, it's the object which gives safekeeping. She'ena chai b'achus, and those, however, she does not have to replace. Currently, by him, I say, b'Hashem kichesh, no, denial about them is denial against God. Not denial against your fellow man. So if there is no shvua, and even if he lies on the shvua, there is no korban shvua, because the lie has to be in a shvua between man and man, not between man and God. Okay? How long is that? You can only take a shvua something which is measured, is weighed, or is counted. Okay, so that's all. Armalus said, I gave you a full house. I gave you a full wallet. Follow man, you're there. The other guy says, I don't know. Whatever you gave, you take. I don't know how much is missing. I don't know if anything is missing. Potter, he doesn't take a shvua because it's not a specified demand. Zomer, if however the plaintiff said, Ada ziz, I left you money up till here in the house, up to this ledge, or Ada chalon, or up to window, chayav, he's liable to pay him. He's liable for shvua in that case. Why? Because in that case I say, Lamaisa, there was a midah of mishkal or minion given. It said, the claimant says, I gave you a big menorah. The other guy says, the defendant says, no, you only gave me a small menorah. Chayav, that's the might of mikzas. Says, why? So it's asking, well, actually, how can you say this? It says only take a shvua on something which is in measure. Now, it's a funny question. If it was up to me, I would change the question around, but I don't even think it goes in our Mishnah. But the question is like, it's not might have mitzvahs. It's two different meaning, right? So forget about the weight, right?
It's the same thing, it's just different size.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A small size can become a big size. Add on coins to a small amount of coins, it becomes the bigger amount. But this is not might have been mitzvahs, right? Has to be from a measure. That's our being our measure. From a measure, I can see part of the measure. From a count, I can see part of the count. From a weight, I can see part of the weight. But this is not the same thing, right? It's a chidim esoyim. That's the first question. No, but my mem says cool answer. This is also in the Bavli. When I said the part of menorah is to talk about a menorah which is made by adding sections, a sectional menorah. Okay, so sectional menorah, so Taka has partial weight. Okay, that's really the end of the sugya, and it's 10:15, so we'll stop here, and we'll continue with Amud Beis tomorrow night.